There are many different skills, character builds, and weapon types that you can use to beat Fallout New Vegas. You can blow enemies up with landmines and frag grenades. You can shoot enemies with guns or laser weapons. You can even beat them to death with random junk that you find around the Mojave, such as the humble pool cue. You can even use your speech or barter skills to manipulate NPCs or talk your way out of a situation. If you take too much damage, you can use a simple med pack, or if you're feeling a bit more adventurous, use your survival skill and eat some food or drink some water. And upon leveling up, you can personally improve the skills that best fit your character build. And with the many different outcomes and endings that can occur from this game, this gives the player a real sense of freedom, choosing how they want to play the game and the best options for them. But what if you couldn't? Can you actually beat Fallout New Vegas without using any skills? The rules for this challenge are pretty simple. I am not allowed to use any skills whatsoever. This means that I can't use any weapons, I can't barter or pass any speech checks, I can't lockpick, hack terminals, sneak, use med packs. You get the idea. Everyone clear and happy with the rules? No? Great, let's get started. So to begin with, I woke up in Doc Mitchell's house, created my character and headed over to the Vigor Tester machine. I kept my strength and perception at 5, raised my endurance to 10, drained charisma and intelligence, and distributed these points between agility and luck. The only attributes that might actually matter here are endurance and luck. Then Doc Mitchell asked me to take part in a medical survey to review his performance. Now, because I'm not going to be using any skills in this challenge, my tag skills are irrelevant, so I picked the top 3. I also didn't pick any traits as I didn't feel they'd be useful at all, and finally headed out into the Mojave. My first stop was to see Sunny Smiles to run through a quick tutorial on how the game works. I normally like to do this because it provides a good bit of starting experience, however I came across my first problem. She wants me to use a varmint rifle to shoot some bottles, and I can't use the gun skill. So ignoring all the stop, keep out and danger of death signs, I headed straight for Cazador Canyon. So even if I could use any skills for this challenge, fighting the Cazadors at such a low level would be completely out of the question. I attempted to simply just run past all of them. This is normally achievable if you can heal, however I can't. I then decided that hugging the edges of the cliff might be a better idea and hoped they couldn't get me. This didn't work either. I came very close, but eventually they did kill me once again. It was at this point I remembered that I have armor. Initially, however, this didn't help as once again I was killed. Deciding that the armor might actually be slowing me down, I employed a speedrunning strategy, or at least tried to, in which you can jump to move faster. Eventually I made it through Cazador Canyon. And upon making it to Red Rock Canyon, I slept in one of the tents to regain my health before heading straight to New Vegas. I stopped off at Camp McCarran along the way to hopefully pick up an NCR uniform so that I could use the monorail. Having no luck finding a uniform here, I decided to head straight for Freeside so that I had the fast travel location. I then fast travelled back to Good Springs and made it to Prim. I found an NCR uniform inside of one of the tents, put it on, and then headed back towards the monorail. Now, aside from attempting to speedrun this game, I've never actually legitimately used the monorail, which means I didn't know how to actually get into it. After spending a bit of time searching, I realised that I'd already found the entrance to the monorail in Camp McCarran while I was looking for an NCR uniform. And after finally using the monorail to access New Vegas, the first thing I did was head to the White Glove Society and the Emerters. I then headed to the 188 trading post and collected Veronica, as I was going to need her to enter the Brotherhood of Steel bunker. Heading back for the strip, I made for the Tops Casino in the hope that I would be able to just get the platinum chip off Benny straight away. I leveled up here, but it doesn't really matter because I can't use any skills, so I just dumped all of my skill points into anything and took the intense training perk, increasing my perception. However, I'd gained enough experience that I actually went straight to level 4, so I took the cannibal perk as well. Didn't really need to, but had to use something. It's also worth mentioning that I wouldn't be allowed to use the cannibal perk or eat any food, as this is governed by your survival skill. I spoke to Benny in the Tops and immediately engaged in combat, hoping that Veronica would be able to take him down, but I was wrong. So normally if you have a high enough speech skill, you can convince Benny to meet you up in his room on his own, at which point I would have been able to kill him. However, because I can't use my speech skill, I can't do this. And so Veronica and I were ambushed by his bodyguards. However, Veronica was able to take down all of the guards. I then went to speak to Yes Man and formulated a plan about how we could take over New Vegas together. I then headed to Camp Golf and found a lucky 38 VIP pass card. Now this was necessary because I'm not allowed to use my science skill to hack the terminal to get into Mr. House's chamber. However, with the VIP pass card, I got in with no problem. Disconnecting Mr. House from Cerebral meant I was one step closer to taking over New Vegas. I then left Veronica inside the Fiend Shack just outside of Boomer territory so that she couldn't be killed, and hugged the left-hand wall to shield myself from most of the explosions as I headed towards the Boomer fence. Once I'd met the Boomers, I slept to recover and then headed for Hidden Valley. After meeting the Brotherhood of Steel, I immediately left and then reported back to Yes Man, telling him that I'd met all of the factions. I then jumped into the river and swam all the way down to Cottonwood Cove, where I caught a boat to Caesar's camp. After speaking to Caesar, he gave me back the platinum chip, and I headed down into the Lucky 38 bunker. I ignored all of the enemies down here, running past everything and upgrading the Securitron army before getting the hell out of there. I then slept in a bed to recover my health, spoke to Caesar, and had Benny crucified. Returning to Yes Man, I told him I didn't care what happened to President Kimball, donned an NCR uniform, headed to the El Dorado substation, and rediverted the power. And with all my objectives now complete, I could finally begin the battle for Hoover Dam. So my strategy here was simply to just ignore and run past everything. Veronica would take out the odd enemy. I also had NCR troopers and my Securitron army with me. I thought I'd come across a huge issue when trying to get to the control box because normally I just convinced the NCR to let me in. I also wasn't sure if lying was affected by your speech skill, so I couldn't do this either. So I thought I'd just simply try my luck and head inside the control room anyway, rediverting the power to the fort and activating my Securitron army. The NCR did actually attack me after this, however my Securitron and Veronica made short work of them. I made sure to pick up and wear the power armor from their corpses before heading back outside, and my Securitrons also cleared the way into the Legate's tent. Now there was just me and Veronica. I made sure to keep out of the way and let Veronica take care of every Praetorian guard I could find. This is because I didn't want any other Praetorians sneaking up on me while we were fighting the Legate. I also had to make sure that I had as much health as possible when going to fight Legate Lanius. Since I can't use my medicine and survival skills, I can't heal. And finally, with everything else clear, it was time to take on Legate Lanius. Now, on Crybaby Easy mode, Veronica actually does decent damage against the Legate. The problem, and it's something I didn't think of, is that he has other Praetorian guards with him. If he was by himself, I think this would have been very easy. But as things are at the moment, Veronica will get knocked out, and I cannot outrun the Legate. They say the definition of insanity is trying the same thing several times and expecting different results. But after trying this several times, it was very obvious that this wasn't going to work. And so I thought that I might need a strategy in order to do this. I tried hiding up on one of the cliffs, hoping that Veronica would just keep attacking them. Unfortunately, however, some of them do have guns, so this wasn't going to work either. I then realised that there is a caged area inside the camp that I could potentially lock Legate Lanius and Veronica inside. However, I accidentally locked myself inside with Legate Lanius. I tried again, placing Veronica inside the cage before I begun the fight, and then tried to lure him inside. This did seem to work for a small time, however, one of the Praetorians escaped, and then apparently he can just open the gate anyway. And after many attempts at trying and failing over and over again, I was finally forced to concede defeat and could not beat Fallout New Vegas without using any skills. So I've got a couple of things to say about this run. I think I was faction locked from the start because of my limited options. I was forced to go with Yes Man, as the other factions would have wanted me to take down one of the other ones, whereas with Yes Man, these can all be ignored. It was really fun to actually play this game without really doing anything, and I want to know what you guys think. Is there actually a way to get through the last fight without using any skills? How could I have succeeded in this challenge? Could I have done anything differently? I really have thought long and hard about this, and I genuinely don't think it's possible, but I'm interested to hear what you guys think. And finally, I'd just like to say a huge thank you for watching today. Please like, subscribe and all that good stuff. Leave any comments if you do have any, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.